Samuel Brennan pressed his calloused palm against the cold airport window, watching the massive Boeing 747 being prepped for departure. The reflection staring back at him looked older than his 38 years, weathered by grief and the relentless march of single parenthood. His wedding ring, which he still couldn't bring himself to remove, caught the harsh fluorescent lights as he adjusted the worn leather strap of his backpack. "Lord, I don't even know why I'm doing this," he whispered, his breath fogging the glass. It had been 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days since Rachel had passed. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days of putting one foot in front of the other, of making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs for his 11-year-old son Nathan, of pretending the gaping hole in his chest wasn't threatening to swallow him whole. The vacation to London had been his sister Margaret's idea. "You need to remember who you are outside of being Nathan's dad and Rachel's widower," she'd said, practically shoving the ticket into his hands. "Nathan will be fine with us for a week. Go, breathe, live, living." Such a simple word that had become impossibly complex. Samuel made his way to the gate, fingering the boarding pass like it was made of gold leaf. First class. "A computer glitch," the gate agent had explained with barely contained excitement, had resulted in an unexpected upgrade. Samuel hadn't flown first class in his entire life. As an automotive engineer at a small firm in Columbus, Ohio, luxury wasn't exactly in his vocabulary. The upgrade felt like a small mercy from above, a tiny reminder that maybe God hadn't forgotten about him entirely. The boarding announcement crackled through the terminal, and Samuel joined the priority boarding line, feeling distinctly out of place among the business suits and designer luggage. His jeans had a small oil stain near the knee from helping his neighbor fix her car last week, and his button-down shirt was from Target's clearance rack. But none of that mattered. For the next 8 hours, he was going to experience how the other half lived. The first-class cabin was like stepping into another world. The seats were practically beds, each one a private sanctuary of cream leather and polished wood accents. Samuel found his seat, 2A, and sank into it with an almost reverent sigh. The leather embraced him like a warm hug, and for a moment, just a moment, the constant ache in his chest eased. "Can I offer you champagne, Mr. Brennan?" A flight attendant with a practiced smile and perfect posture appeared at his elbow. "Just water, please," Samuel replied, then caught himself. "Actually, you know what? Orange juice. My wife always said life's too short not to drink orange juice on airplanes." The flight attendant's smile warmed slightly, becoming more genuine. "Coming right up, sir." Samuel was just settling in, having kicked off his shoes and found the button that made the seat recline to an almost scandalous angle, when he heard the commotion. It started as a murmur near the cabin entrance, then escalated to clearly distressed voices. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but the booking system shows only one economy seat under your reservation." The lead flight attendant's voice carried that particular tone of forced patience that came from dealing with difficult situations all day. "But I specifically booked 3 seats together." The woman speaking had a British accent, cultured but fraying at the edges with exhaustion. "I'm their nanny. I can't possibly leave them alone." Samuel craned his neck to see what was happening. Near the entrance stood a woman in her 50s, her grey hair escaping from what had probably been a neat bun hours ago. She was juggling multiple bags while trying to keep 2 small girls from wandering off. The girls, identical twins from what Samuel could see, couldn't have been more than 7 years old. They had that particular brand of exhaustion that only came from long travel days, their matching pink backpacks drooping off their small shoulders. One of the girls, wearing a purple dress that had seen better hours, was clutching a well-loved stuffed elephant to her chest. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. The other, in a similar dress but in blue, was trying to be brave. Her chin jutted out defiantly, but Samuel could see her lower lip trembling. "The system shows a booking error," the flight attendant continued, her tablet in hand. "We have 1 economy seat for you, but nothing adjacent. The flight is completely full except for..." Wait, we do have 2 seats available in first class, but first class. The nanny's voice rose an octave. Their mother would have my head if I put them in first class alone. She's very particular about... I'm not sitting by myself, the girl in purple suddenly wailed, the tears finally spilling over. I want to stay with Rosie. The girl in blue, apparently Rosie, immediately wrapped her arms around her sister. It's okay, Lily. I won't let them separate us. Samuel was on his feet before he'd made a conscious decision to move. It was something about the way the girls clung to each other, the way the overhead lights caught the exhaustion in their young faces. It reminded him of Nathan after the funeral, small and lost, and desperately needing comfort. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the group. "I couldn't help but overhear. I'm in 2A. I'll trade seats with them." Everyone turned to look at him. The flight attendant's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose toward her hairline. "Sir, that's a first-class seat. You'd be moving to economy." "I understand," Samuel said, already reaching for his backpack. "These girls need to be together, and their nanny needs to be near them. It's the right thing to do." The nanny's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Sir, that's incredibly generous, but we couldn't possibly—" "You're not asking, I'm offering," Samuel said gently. He knelt down to the girl's level, his knees protesting slightly. "Hey there, I'm Samuel. That's a pretty cool elephant you've got there." Lily hugged the elephant tighter, but managed a tiny smile. "His name is Peanut. Peanut's a great name. You know, my son has a stuffed dinosaur named Sir Chomps-a-Lot." Rosie giggled despite herself. "That's a silly name." "The silliest," Samuel agreed solemnly. "Now how about you two take my big fancy seat up there? It's got buttons that make it go up and down, and they bring you juice in real glasses." "Real glasses?" Lily's eyes widened. "The realist." The nanny's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Samuel replied, standing up with a small grunt. "Just make sure these ladies have a good flight." The exchange was made quickly, the flight attendant scanning boarding passes with an expression of bewilderment. As Samuel made his way toward economy, he heard one of the girls say, "Nanny Patricia, that man is nice like Pastor Timothy." "Yes, darling," the nanny replied softly. "Some people just have good hearts." Samuel's economy seat was in 34B, a middle seat between a teenager absorbed in his phone and a businessman who'd already claimed both armrests. The contrast to first class was stark, but Samuel found he didn't mind. There was something satisfying about the choice he'd made, something that felt like Rachel would have approved of. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo app, scrolling to a picture of Rachel and Nathan at the beach last summer before she got sick. Her smile was radiant, unaware of the cancer already growing inside her. Nathan was mid-laugh, a hermit crab in his palm. "You would have done the same thing," he murmured to the photo. "You always said kindness costs nothing but means everything." The businessman beside him shifted, glancing at Samuel's phone. "Family?" "Yeah," Samuel replied, not elaborating. "Heading to London for business?" "Just getting away for a bit." The man nodded knowingly. "We all need that sometimes." The flight progressed uneventfully. Samuel dozed fitfully, his knees pressed against the seat in front of him, his neck at an awkward angle. Somewhere over the Atlantic, he woke to find the teenager beside him had fallen asleep on his shoulder. The kid couldn't have been more than 16, probably flying alone. Samuel stayed still, not wanting to wake him. It was in these small moments that Samuel felt closest to God, not in the grand gestures or the profound prayers, but in the quiet acts of grace. Rachel had taught him that. She'd been the one to drag him to church initially, back when they were dating. Samuel had been skeptical, his faith more cultural than personal, something inherited from his parents rather than chosen for himself. But Rachel had shown him a different way to believe. Not in the fire and brimstone of judgment, but in the gentle persistence of love. She'd volunteered at the soup kitchen every Saturday, taught Sunday school to the rowdy 5-year-olds, and never passed a homeless person without offering food or at least a kind word. "Faith without works is dead," she'd say, quoting James while elbow-deep in donated clothes at the church thrift store. "We're called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, Sam. That means getting them dirty sometimes." After she died, Samuel had struggled with his faith. How could a loving God take a 35-year-old mother from her family? How could he let Nathan grow up without his mum? The questions had no answers, or at least none that satisfied the gaping wound in Samuel's soul. Pastor David had been patient with his anger. "It's okay to be mad at God," he'd said during one of their many coffee meetings. "He's big enough to handle it, just don't stop talking to him." So Samuel hadn't stopped, even when his prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, even when the words turned to ash in his mouth. He kept showing up, kept serving, kept trying to be the man Rachel had believed he could be. The plane began its descent into London as the sun painted the clouds gold and pink. Samuel's neck ached, his back protested, and he desperately needed to use the bathroom. But he stayed still, letting the teenager sleep. Small mercies, quiet grace. When they finally landed and began the slow shuffle off the plane, Samuel caught a glimpse of the twins in first class. They were both asleep, curled up together in the wide seat, Peanut the elephant squished between them. The nanny, Patricia, was carefully gathering their things, her movements gentle to avoid waking them. She caught Samuel's eye and mouthed, "Thank you," with such genuine gratitude that Samuel had to look away, his throat suddenly tight. The immigration line at Heathrow was a nightmare, stretching in serpentine curves through the terminal. Samuel resigned himself to a long wait, pulling out his phone to text Margaret that he'd landed safely. That's when he heard his name being called over the airport's PA system. "Mr. Samuel Brennan, please report to the Sky Atlantic Airlines customer service desk. Mr. Samuel Brennan, to the Sky Atlantic customer service desk." Samuel frowned. Sky Atlantic? That wasn't even the airline he'd flown with. Still, curiosity and a vague concern that something might be wrong with his luggage propelled him out of line and toward the desk. A young woman in a crisp Sky Atlantic uniform smiled at him as he approached. "Mr. Brennan, that's me. Is there a problem?" "Not at all, sir. If you'll just follow me, please." She led him through a door marked Staff Only, and down a corridor that seemed to exist in a different universe from the chaos of the main terminal. The carpet was plush, the walls adorned with artistic photographs of planes through the decades. Finally, she stopped at a door marked Executive Lounge and knocked twice. "Come in." The voice was crisp, authoritative, with a hint of British refinement. Samuel entered to find himself in what looked more like a high-end hotel suite than an airport lounge. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the tarmac, and the furniture was all leather and dark wood. Standing by the window was a woman who commanded attention without trying. She was perhaps 40, with auburn hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, and a navy suit that probably cost more than Samuel's monthly mortgage. When she turned to face him, Samuel was struck by her eyes, the same bright blue as the twins on the plane. "Mr. Brennan," she said, extending a manicured hand, "I'm Victoria Ashworth, CEO of Sky Atlantic Airlines Group." Samuel shook her hand, thoroughly confused. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been some mistake. I flew Transglobal, not Sky Atlantic." "There's no mistake," Victoria said, gesturing for him to sit. "Those two girls you gave your seat to, they're my daughters." Samuel sank into the offered chair, his mind struggling to catch up. "Your daughters?" "Lily and Rosemary, yes. They were flying back from visiting their father in New York." Something flickered across her face, a shadow of pain quickly suppressed. "The divorce was, well, that's neither here nor there. The point is, Patricia just called me. She told me what you did. It was nothing, really, just a seat." Victoria studied him with those penetrating blue eyes. "When's the last time you flew first class, Mr. Brennan?" Samuel shifted uncomfortably. "Today was actually my first time. Well, it would have been. And you gave it up for two children you'd never met. They needed it more than I did." Victoria walked to a cabinet and pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of what looked like very expensive scotch. "Patricia mentioned you're a widower. She said the girl saw a photo on your phone when you were deplaning. Samuel stiffened slightly. I'm not prying, Victoria said gently, pouring 2 fingers of scotch into each glass. I'm divorced, which isn't the same thing, I know. But loss is loss. It changes you. She handed him a glass, and Samuel took it despite rarely drinking. The scotch burned pleasantly, tasting of smoke and age. My daughters have had a rough year, Victoria continued, sitting across from him. The divorce, the custody battles, being shuttled between continents. They've become suspicious of adults, especially men. Their father— She paused, choosing her words carefully. Their father isn't unkind, but he's not particularly interested in being a father. He sees them because the court mandates it, not because he wants to. Samuel thought of Nathan, of the way his son still crawled into his bed during thunderstorms, of their Saturday morning pancake traditions, of the fierce, protective love that sometimes felt like it might consume him. I can't imagine, he said quietly. But you, Victoria continued, you showed them kindness without expecting anything in return. Patricia said they talked about you the entire flight. The nice man who gave them his special seat. The man with the son who has a dinosaur with a silly name. Sir Chomps-a-Lot is a very dignified name, Samuel protested with a small smile. Victoria laughed, and it transformed her face, making her look younger, less burdened. I'm sure it is. The point is, Mr. Brennan, I believe in rewarding kindness, especially the kind that's given freely, without thought of reward. She stood and walked to a desk, pulling out an elegant business card. This is my direct line. From now on, whenever you fly, anywhere in the world, you fly first class. Any airline in our group, which includes Sky Atlantic, Transglobal, and about 6 others. No charge ever. Samuel stared at the card. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's already done, Victoria said firmly. The computer system has been updated. You're in our database as a Platinum Elite member for life. But do you know what my daughters said when they woke up? They asked if the nice man who gave them his seat believed in God like they do. When Patricia said she thought so, Lily said, I knew it. He had the same kind eyes as Miss Catherine at Sunday school. Samuel's throat constricted. They go to church? Their nanny takes them. I'm not much of a believer myself, but I want them to have that foundation, that moral compass. Today, you showed them what that foundation looks like in practice. She paused, then added more softly, You showed me too. Samuel stood, pocketing the business card. Thank you, but I really did just do what anyone would do. No, Victoria said firmly. You did what you thought was right, regardless of what anyone else would do. There's a difference. She walked him to the door, then paused. How long are you in London? A week. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? I'd like you to meet the girls properly. They'd be thrilled. Samuel thought about it. Part of him wanted to retreat to his hotel room, to maintain the comfortable isolation he'd wrapped around himself like armor. But he heard Rachel's voice in his head, gentle but insistent. Say yes to life, Sam. Always say yes to life. I'd like that, he said. Victoria smiled. Excellent. I'll send a car to your hotel. Where are you staying? Samuel named the modest bed and breakfast near King's Cross, and if Victoria thought anything of it, she didn't show it. As he left the executive lounge, the young assistant appeared again to escort him through a VIP fast-track immigration line. He was through in minutes, his passport stamped without him having to say a word. The black car that appeared at his bed and breakfast the next evening was so out of place on the narrow street that neighbors came to their windows to stare. Samuel had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on his one good pair of khakis and a button-down shirt that Nathan had helped him pick out last Christmas. You look nice, Dad, Nathan had said over their video call an hour earlier. Are you making friends? Something like that, buddy. Good. Aunt Margaret says you need more friends. Aunt Margaret says a lot of things. Nathan had grinned, and for a moment Samuel saw Rachel in his smile. Love you, Dad. London is lucky to have you. The driver, A man who looked like he could moonlight as a bodyguard opened the door for Samuel with professional courtesy. The ride through London was a blur of lights and landmarks Samuel had only seen in movies. They eventually pulled up to a townhouse in Belgravia that looked like it had been plucked from a period drama. Victoria answered the door herself, dressed down in jeans and a cashmere sweater that somehow looked more expensive than her business suit. "Samuel, welcome. Fair warning, the girls have been bouncing off the walls since I told them you were coming." As if on cue, two blonde hurricanes came barreling down the hallway. "Mr. Samuel! Mr. Samuel!" Lily and Rosie attached themselves to his legs like adorable barnacles. They were wearing matching pajamas covered in unicorns, their hair still damp from baths. "Girls, let the poor man breathe," Victoria laughed. "At least let him get inside first." The townhouse was elegantly appointed but surprisingly warm, with children's artwork framed alongside what looked like original paintings. The dining room table was set for 4, but it wasn't formal. There were colourful placemats and mismatched napkins that the girls had clearly chosen. "We helped cook," Rosie announced proudly. "We made the salad." "I cut the cucumbers," Lily added, "with a real knife. Mummy supervised." Dinner was a lively affair. The girls peppered Samuel with questions about Nathan, about America, about Sir Chomsalot. They showed him their own stuffed animal collection, which was extensive and well-loved. They told him about their school, their friends, their favourite books. "Do you know any Bible stories?" Lily asked suddenly over dessert, which was ice cream sundaes the girls had assembled with architectural precision. "I know a few," Samuel admitted. "Tell us one. Patricia always tells us one before bed, but she's visiting her sister tonight." Samuel glanced at Victoria, who nodded with a small smile. They'd like that. So Samuel found himself telling the story of David and Goliath, but he made it interactive, letting the girls act out parts. Rosie was David, wielding a rolled-up napkin as a sling. Lily was Goliath, standing on a chair and roaring dramatically. Victoria watched from the doorway, sipping wine, her expression unreadable. "And David wasn't scared?" Rosie asked when the story was done. "Oh, he was probably scared," Samuel said. "But he did the right thing anyway. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared. Like when you gave us your airplane seat even though you really wanted it," Lily asked. Samuel was struck by the perception of children. "Something like that, yeah." "Mummy says you're a hero," Rosie announced. "I'm not a hero," Samuel protested. "I'm just a regular dad who—" "Heroes don't think they're heroes," Lily interrupted sagely. "That's what makes them heroes." After the girls had been tucked into bed, with Samuel reading them one more story at their insistence, he and Victoria sat in the living room with coffee and a comfortable silence. "They haven't been that animated in months," Victoria said finally. "Thank you. They're great kids." "They are. Their father doesn't see it. He thinks they're too loud, too energetic. He prefers his new girlfriend's daughter, who's apparently better behaved." The bitterness in her voice was sharp but brief. "Sorry, I shouldn't speak ill of him." "You're human," Samuel said simply. "And you're hurting." Victoria looked at him then, really looked at him. "How do you do it? How do you keep going after losing someone you love?" Samuel thought about the question, rolling his coffee mug between his palms. "I don't know if I have a good answer. Some days I don't keep going, not really. I just exist. But then Nathan needs help with homework, or laughs at something silly, or asks me to make Rachel's famous lasagna. And I remember that love doesn't die just because someone does." He paused, then added, "My faith helps. Not in a everything happens for a reason way, because I don't believe that. Some things are just horrible and senseless. But in a I'm not alone in this way, in a there's still good to be done way." "The girl's father is an atheist," Victoria said. "Militant about it. It was one of many things we fought about. I'm agnostic myself, but I wanted the girls to have exposure to faith, to make their own choices. That's all any of us can do. Give them the tools and let them build their own beliefs." They talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about the challenges of single parenthood, about loss and resilience, about the strange comfort of finding someone who understood without needing explanations. When Samuel finally looked at his watch, it was nearly midnight. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "The car will take you back," Victoria said, walking him to the door. "Samuel, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Would you mind if we stayed in touch? The girls would love to write to Nathan, maybe video call sometimes, and—" She hesitated, then forged ahead. "I'd like to continue our conversations." Samuel thought of Rachel, of what she'd want for him. He could almost hear her voice. "Stop just surviving, Sam. Start living again." "I'd like that too," he said. The rest of his week in London passed in a blur. He did the tourist things, saw Big Ben and the Tower of London, but his mind kept drifting to that dinner, to the unexpected connection he'd felt. Victoria texted him recommendations for restaurants and hidden gems only locals knew about. The girls sent him drawings they'd made of him as a superhero, complete with a cape. On his last day, Victoria invited him for afternoon tea. This time, it was just the two of them, the girls at school. They met at a small cafe in Notting Hill, away from the corporate world she inhabited. "I have a confession," Victoria said over scones and clotted cream. "I had my assistant research you." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Find anything interesting?" "An exemplary work record, glowing recommendations from your church, and a GoFundMe your community set up for your wife's medical bills that you tried to refuse." "I didn't want charity." "It wasn't charity. It was love. There's a difference." She pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "Don't open it yet. Wait until you're on the plane. Victoria, please, just trust me." The flight home was bittersweet. Samuel was eager to see Nathan, to return to the familiar rhythms of home, but part of him felt like he was leaving something important behind. He was back in first class, Victoria's gift ensuring he'd never fly economy again, but this time he could enjoy it properly. Halfway across the Atlantic, he opened Victoria's envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a photograph of the girls holding a sign that said, "Thank you, Mr. Samuel." The letter read, "Dear Samuel, in the corporate world, I'm used to transactions. Everything has a price, every kindness has an ulterior motive. You reminded me that sometimes people are just good because that's who they are. You asked how I keep going after loss. I think I've been going through the motions, not really living. Watching you with my daughters, seeing how you carry your grief without letting it define you, has shown me a different way. The girls have decided you're their honorary uncle, whether you like it or not. I've decided you're a friend, if you'll have me. Not because of the seat you gave up, but because of the man you chose to remain, despite your loss. There's a conference in Columbus next month that I've suddenly decided I need to attend personally. Perhaps you could show me and the girls around your city. Nathan and Sir Chomsalot would be most welcome to join us. With gratitude and growing affection, Victoria P.S. Check your email when you land." The girls made a video message for Nathan. Samuel read the letter 3 times, each time feeling the walls he'd built around his heart crack a little more. He thought of Rachel, of their last conversation before she slipped into the coma she never woke from. "Promise me something," she'd whispered, her hand fragile as paper in his. "Promise me you won't stop because I do. Promise me you'll show Nathan that love isn't about holding on. It's about being brave enough to let go and love again." He'd promised, but he hadn't understood what she meant. Not until now. When he landed in Columbus, Nathan was waiting at the arrivals gate with Margaret and her husband Tom. His son launched himself into Samuel's arms with the force of a small missile. Dad, did you see the Queen? Did you eat fish and chips? Did you ride a double-decker bus?" "All of the above, buddy, and I made some friends." "Really? Cool. Can I meet them?" "Actually, yeah. They're coming to visit next month." Nathan's eyes went wide. "Here? To our house? If that's okay with you." "That's so cool. Wait until I tell everyone at school that we have friends from England." That night, after Nathan was asleep, Samuel sat in Rachel's chair, the one he'd been unable to bring himself to move. He pulled out his phone and composed a text to Victoria. The girl's video message made Nathan's year. He's already planning what to show you all in Columbus. Fair warning, it involves a lot of pizza and the zoo. Thank you for the letter, for the friendship, and for reminding me that giving up a seat can sometimes mean making room for new beginnings. See you next month. Sam. The response came quickly. Can't wait. The girls are already practicing their American accents. They're terrible at it. V. Samuel smiled, then did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He moved Rachel's photo from his nightstand to the mantel where it belonged. Not hidden away in grief, but displayed in love, watching over the life that continued to unfold. A month later, Victoria's visit exceeded all expectations. Nathan and the twins became instant friends, bonding over shared stories and elaborate games. Samuel watched Victoria relax in a way she probably rarely did, laughing at Nathan's jokes, helping with dinner, existing outside her corporate armor. On their last evening, after the children were asleep, Samuel and Victoria sat on his back porch, looking at the stars that were barely visible through the light pollution. This is nice, Victoria said softly. Normal. Real. It's just Ohio. No, it's a home. There's a difference between a house and a home. You and Nathan have built something special here. We're trying. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, The girls asked if you could be their dad. Samuel's breath caught. Victoria, I told them you're Nathan's dad, but that you could be their friend, their special friend who shows them what good men look like. I'm not that good. You're good enough. More than enough. She reached over and took his hand, a simple gesture that felt monumentally complex. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, but I want you to know that I see a future here. Not now, maybe not soon, but someday. Samuel squeezed her hand gently. Someday sounds good. 6 months passed. Video calls became a weekly tradition. The girls learned about American holidays while Nathan learned about British customs. Victoria found more reasons to visit the States, and Samuel discovered that first-class flights to London were surprisingly convenient when you didn't have to pay for them. It was on one of these visits, almost a year after that first flight, that everything shifted. Samuel was in London for Nathan's spring break. The 4 children were becoming something that looked remarkably like siblings, bickering and laughing in equal measure. They were at Hyde Park, the kids feeding ducks despite the signs saying not to, when Victoria said quietly, The girls want to know if it would be okay to call you Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam? Like the American poster? They don't know about that. They just know they love you. Samuel watched Nathan teaching Rosie how to skip stones in the pond, Lily cheering them on. I'd be honored. And what about me? Victoria asked, vulnerability creeping into her usually composed voice. What can I call you? Samuel turned to her, seeing in her eyes the same fear and hope he felt. How about we start with mine and see where it goes? She kissed him then, soft and sure, and for the first time since Rachel died, Samuel felt his heart beat without pain. 3 years after that first flight, Samuel stood at the altar of a small church in Columbus, Nathan beside him as his best man. The twins walked down the aisle throwing flower petals with enthusiastic abandon. Victoria appeared in the doorway, radiant in a simple white dress, and Samuel felt Rachel's presence like a warm embrace, approving, encouraging, releasing him to love again. Pastor David, who officiated, spoke about second chances, about God's grace in bringing broken people together to create something whole. He spoke about the courage it takes to love after loss, to trust after betrayal, to believe that joy can exist alongside grief. During the reception, held in the church fellowship hall with handmade decorations and potluck dishes from the congregation, Nathan stood up with a glass of apple juice. I want to make a toast, he announced, his voice cracking with approaching adolescence, to my dad, who gave up a seat and got a family, to Victoria, who's not trying to be my mom but is pretty cool anyway, To Lily and Rosie, who are the sisters I never knew I wanted, and to my mum, who I think sent you all to us." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as Samuel and Victoria danced to Amazing Grace, played on the church's old piano, she whispered, "You know what the girls asked me yesterday?" "What?" "If God arranged for that booking error so you'd be on our flight." "What did you tell them?" "That I don't know how God works, but I know grace when I see it." Samuel pulled her closer, thinking of all the small choices that had led to this moment. A mechanical failure that delayed his original flight, a computer glitch that upgraded his seat, 2 tired little girls who needed kindness, a decision to give up comfort for compassion. "Maybe they're right," he said. "Maybe sometimes God works through booking errors and middle seats and stubborn men who don't know how to stop being sad. And stubborn women who don't know how to stop being angry," Victoria added. "Good thing we found each other then. The best thing." As they danced, Samuel caught sight of their reflection in the window. They looked like what they were, imperfect people who'd found perfect grace in each other's broken places. The wedding ring on his right hand caught the light. Rachel's ring, that he'd never stop wearing, now joined by a new ring on his left hand. A symbol not of replacement, but of continuation. Outside, the Ohio night was clear and full of stars, each one a reminder that light shines brightest in the darkness. Inside, surrounded by family both given and chosen, Samuel finally understood what Rachel had tried to tell him. Love doesn't end. It just changes shape, flowing like water into whatever vessel it needs to fill. The twins were now calling him Dad, though he'd never asked them to. Nathan called Victoria by her first name, but with a warmth that said family louder than any title could. They were building something new from the pieces of what was lost, not trying to recreate the past, but honoring it while moving forward. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a week in London that Victoria insisted on planning, Lily tugged on Samuel's jacket. "Dad, Sam." "Yeah, sweetheart." "Was it really just about an airplane seat?" Samuel knelt down to her level, his knee protesting as it always did. "What do you think?" "I think God knew we needed you, and you needed us." "You know what? I think you're absolutely right." She hugged him tight, and over her shoulder Samuel saw Victoria helping Nathan with his tie, both of them laughing at something. Rosie was showing Patricia, who'd come all the way from England for the wedding, a drawing she'd made of their new family. It had started with a seat, a simple choice to put others before himself, but it had become so much more. It had become redemption, resurrection, a second chance at a life he'd thought was over. As they finally made their way to the car, tin cans tied to the bumper courtesy of the youth group, rice in their hair despite asking people not to throw it, Samuel paused at the church door. He looked back at the cross hanging above the altar, simple wood with no adornment, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. "Thank you for the wilderness," he prayed silently. "Thank you for not letting me stay there. And thank you for booking errors and middle seats and hearts brave enough to love again." Victoria's hand found his. "Ready?" "Ready." They walked into their new life together, a family forged not from perfection, but from the perfect grace that makes all things new. Behind them, the church bells rang out into the night, a celebration not of endings, but of beginnings, not of what was lost, but of what was found. Not of the seat given up, but of the love that took its place.